Hey guys, today we're going to learn the giant spring. So in order to learn the giant spring, you need to know how to thumb spring. I would also recommend knowing how to finger spring as well, just because that, in my opinion, is the most useful flourish that you could ever learn. It feeds into so many other tricks. I really recommend learning the finger spring first, which you can learn right over here. The way this video is going to be set up is I'm going to start by teaching you the basic thumb spring, and then we're going to learn the giant spring, how to make the thumb spring giant. So I am going to teach the thumb spring in a different way than most people teach the thumb spring, because you have to change it in order to be able to do the giant spring. So if you know the thumb spring already and you want to skip ahead to the giant spring, you can do so, but understand that I changed the way you're going to do your thumb spring before you get there. So it might be advantageous to watch the whole video through, but if you're pretty confident, go ahead and jump to the giant spring section. Also, make sure to grab an older deck of cards, not clumpy, but broken in, so they're pretty easy to squeeze. You don't want a stiff new deck for this, it's going to be much, much harder. So grab your deck and let's get started. Come on. Alright, so we're going to start with the basic thumb spring. So the first thing to start with is hand position. So let's start with the catching hand, because if you can't catch the cards, they're just going to end up on the ground. Okay, so your catching hand basically is doing the same position that you would do if you were doing a charlet or cut. So you have it in mechanics grip, you take your pinky and you move it to the bottom. Your pinky is what is going to catch all of these cards. So your pinky's going to catch all the cards. If you don't put your pinky there, messy. Now a thumb spring basically means all the cards are going to shoot off of your thumb. Unlike a finger spring where they shoot off your fingers, the finger spring, they move forward. With the thumb spring, they're going to move back. Especially if you do a harder squeeze. It's a little weird not having any cards in that hand when you do the position, but you'll realize why you have to have it in this weird claw-like position after you do this for a little bit. So the first thing we're going to want to do, our first goal, is just get here. So we have to talk about the hand position of the right hand. So again, traditionally, you would teach a thumb spring with your fingers right here, and your thumb is down here. And it's not a very deep press. So you want to place your thumb on the left-hand corner of the deck down here, and your fingers are going to come and grip the deck real deep. Now your first finger position is going to be important. You're going to want to place it here so all of your fingers are even with the deck, but that would be wrong. You want to place your finger in the center of the deck. Now depending on your hand size, you can only get so deep. So most people I see when they teach the giant spring, they tell you to basically put the cards right here. Well, my hand's not that big, so I can't get it in that deep. So mine ends up being right about here, right about at the knuckle. So you're going to place it at the knuckle there. That's how deep you want it in, but your thumb is just barely on there, just hanging by a thread. So if you squeeze, you'll get something like that. So you're going to want to put your hands close together and squeeze. Now remember, I said move your middle or your first finger to the center of the deck. So on the other side of the deck, we're looking like this. Almost nothing in this side of the hand. Now, what you're going to want to practice first, again, is just squeezing right into your hand like this. You're going to squeeze, and the cards are going to come off of the thumb. If they don't come off of the thumb, you just want to move your thumb slightly back like that. Now again, we're going to start by practicing just this, putting your hands pretty close together and just going from one hand to the other. Now, it's not going to look as smooth as what you're seeing me do right now. You're going to get clumps. What the clumps mean is that your hand is stalling. You're moving it closed, and moving it closed, stopping, moving it closed, stopping, moving it closed, etc. So what you're going to want to do to smooth that out is start by going kind of fast, like that. You'll notice when you go faster, it's smoother. As time goes on, you want to slow it down so you can get as smooth as you can, as slow as you can, as smooth as you can. It doesn't have to go ridiculously slow. If I go too slow, I still get that. But you want it to be smooth as you can get it. So you have a nice consistent spring. That's going to be important, especially when you get to the giant spring. You don't want any gaps in your spring. Now, as time goes on, you're going to be moving your hands and you're going to want to get a bigger spring. You can put your hands apart and practice and just go all the way from one hand to the other. But I don't recommend doing that. One, it doesn't look very good. And two, it is much harder than the way I'm going to teach you in a second. So what you're going to do is, in the finger spring, all the movement is in the catching hand. In the thumb spring, it's all in the shooting hand. So you're going to get into the correct position, and this hand's going to come back and forth, like that. It's going to come up and down. So what you might want to do is start close. Just do this. And then try to get distance more and more. So I would practice one distance for a while until you get that down. Then make your distance a little bit more and get that down. Then make it a little bit more and get that down. Now you'll notice as I get farther and farther, my catching hand does move slightly, but not very much. It's mostly going to be this hand. Now, once you get past that point, we're going to want to start transitioning into a movement that will help us get to the giant spring, but this doesn't necessarily have to be used as a giant spring. You could just do a regular spring like this, and it's going to look like this. So the way that movement works is you're going away with your shooting hand, and then you're coming back with your catching hand. So away and back. Away and back. That's the movement. It's like a half-second delay before this hand starts moving. Now that's it really for the thumb spring. After this point, it's kind of just going to be up to you to practice. Now let's get into how to do the giant spring. So I'm going to start down here for a moment, and then I'm going to change the angle to show you a little bit more of how to do this. So the first most important thing is it's a light squeeze. So with most springs, finger spring, thumb spring, the cards are shooting extremely fast and you're giving it a really good squeeze. You're not going to do that here. Now, if you know how to do a waterfall, you'll kind of be ahead of the game on what this is going to feel like. If you don't, I'm going to explain anyway. So what you're going to do is you're going to squeeze, and notice how the cards kind of do this, like there's air pockets in between them. You're going to squeeze just a little bit more than that. So you are going to spring, but you're going to do a light spring. The cards are barely going to bend. It's almost like you're dropping them. Think of it as you're trying to quiet your spring, and you're doing a light touch, not a super squeeze. You don't want your cards going really fast. You almost want them falling from one hand to the other hand, barely springing the cards, and they're more just falling out of this hand. And the movement is going to be the same. You're going to come out with this hand, and this hand's going to follow it by a microsecond. The longer the delay between this hand and this hand, the bigger your spring is going to end up being. Alright, let's change angles and talk about hand position now. Alright, so if you're liking this so far, make sure you give one of these and one of these. Now at this point, you should be here, right? You should be able to do something like this. Remember, a light squeeze. So now we're going to extend it. It's going to come from your hip up to the side of your head. So to get that, we're going to start with that same distance that you should be at right about now. So you should be somewhere at here. All you're going to do is try to make that a little bit longer, like that, right? Same distance between your hands. Not very far, but just getting that movement down. So remember, it's a delay between your two hands. Your spring hand starts moving, and then both hands are going to follow, and then when you get to here, they're going to close. So, close. So spring, 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 close. Also, at this point, I want you to notice, watch where my arms are. My shoulders follow the spring. So I start this shoulder facing, and I end with this shoulder facing. So it's a whole body movement to make this work. You're then going to start widening the gap. So you want to get this part down. Once you get that down, widen the gap a little bit. So to start widening it to get to this point, you're going to start just by getting that small motion and then widen it and practice that next wider. So you're going to practice this distance, get that down, widen it, practice until you get that down before moving on to a larger distance. Your hand is going to come to about here. At this distance, your hands are going to start moving together to about here, where your bottom hand closes up. So here, move at the same time, close up. You end with your other shoulder facing forward and your hands up by your ear. Now another tidbit that will help a lot is your hands should be moving so fast you almost want it to look like a standstill, like the cards are standing still in the air, right? You're almost trying to move your hands at the same speed you're springing this way. So you're springing this direction, your hands are moving this direction. You almost want those at about the same speed. So from the viewer's point of view, the cards almost look like they're stopping in midair. If they don't look like that and you're seeing them shoot this way, you're probably shooting too hard. You're probably squeezing too much and you're shooting the cards too fast. So to get this down, you want to slow down. Slow and more methodical is the key for this spring. As time goes on, you can get it bigger and bigger, but there is going to be a physical limit to where you can go. Because what's going to happen is there's going to be a certain distance that the cards are going to spring away from each other. So as they're in the spring, there'll be a certain distance from each other. When they get too wide apart, the spring is basically impossible and falls apart. So there's a physical limit that you're going to hit, so understand that going in. Not to expect that you'll be able to get a ridiculously big spring. There is obviously a physical limit to it. Once more, light touch. Make sure if you start seeing cards flip over, what that means is you probably drifted your fingers in. You remember, you want those fingers about center, about center of the pack. You want this thumb to be on the lower left-hand side to give a nice smooth thing. If you start seeing your cards spring almost like sideways, that means you've probably drifted your hand and you need to readjust. Now don't be afraid to adjust what I'm telling you, because what I'm telling you is not necessarily gospel, depending on your hand size. So what you really want to do is watch your spring and see how the cards are coming out. Videotape yourself, watch and see if your spring, does your spring look like it's going sideways? Do the cards look like they're kind of going at a sideways angle? If they are, you may need to readjust how your hand is hitting. One tutorial I've seen actually says you should be pressing with the side of your pinky here and your thumb to get that. But if I do that, I get a very sideways spring. As you can see, if you watch close, you can see those cards moving at a kind of a weird angle towards each other. But if I do it the way I taught you, they move a lot more smooth. Alright guys, that is all there is to it. So hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, just go ahead and hit that dislike button twice. Also, if you'd like more content, magic tricks, cardistry, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much.